The rehab officer is the most important person on the rehab line. Every exposure layer, every vital sign, every documented refusal passes through their hands. In Rehab 1584, the rehab officer doesn't just monitor firefighters. They build the defensible record that protects a brother or sister if they ever receive a cancer diagnosis. Before anything happens in Rehab 1584, the system requires an operator gate. The rehab officer must identify themselves by name. This is not optional. Every action taken from that point forward, every vital sign captured, every disposition confirmed, is permanently attributed to the rehab officer who entered the gate. This creates a chain of accountability that follows the data from the field to the admin dashboard to the final PDF report. If this record is ever reviewed in a legal proceeding, the rehab officer's name is attached to every decision they made. That's not a burden, that's professional accountability. One of the most powerful features for the rehab officer is Layer 1 of the Cumulative Exposure Index. Layer 1 captures the environmental baseline for the entire incident. When the rehab officer documents the fire environment, the structure type, the fuel load, the ventilation conditions, that data is automatically applied to every single firefighter who was on that scene. The rehab officer sets Layer 1 once, and every member inherits that exposure baseline. This means if a firefighter develops cancer 20 years from now, their record will show exactly what they were exposed to on this incident. The rehab officer is the person who made that possible. The app makes this easy because Layer 1 is set at the incident level, not repeated for each firefighter. After the firefighter is released to duty and confirmed by the rehab officer, the exposure documentation modal appears. Layer 2 captures the operational actions: 360 survey, primary search, overhaul, ventilation, fire attack, and more. Layer 3 captures modifiers and physiological indicators, including whether the firefighter handled contaminated equipment like rolling hose from a previous fire, cross-contamination between gear, symptoms reported during rehab, and stress indicators. Layer 4 captures psychological exposures, such as a child fatality or a line-of-duty death. And Layer 5 captures protective actions, the things that reduce risk. Documented wet gross decon, wipes, hood exchange, gear change. These subtractive credits are just as important because they show the firefighter and the department took steps to mitigate exposure. The rehab officer is responsible for documenting all of these layers accurately. When a firefighter refuses to have their vitals taken, the rehab officer is responsible for documenting that refusal. Rehab 1584 provides a structured refusal workflow with 3 steps. Step 1, the rehab officer documents the reason for refusal. If the firefighter gives no reason, the rehab officer enters "no reason provided by firefighter." Step 2, the rehab officer signs as the witness, providing both a printed name and a digital signature. Step 3, the firefighter is asked to sign acknowledging the refusal. If they also refuse to sign, the rehab officer checks a box and documents why. Every refusal is time-stamped and permanently attached to that firefighter's record. This is not about punishing anyone. It's about creating a defensible record that protects everyone involved. Sometimes a firefighter must leave rehab before completing the full process. This is called an aborted rehab. The rehab officer must document the reason with a minimum of 10 characters. Common reasons include operational recall by the incident commander, incident demobilization, or a member request. The app enforces this minimum because a one-word answer like recalled is not defensible. Recalled by IC Smith for a second alarm assignment is. The rehab officer's documentation here becomes part of the permanent record. The rehab officer manages the entire vitals workflow. After initial vitals are captured, the system evaluates whether they fall within normal, abnormal, or critical ranges. Normal vitals allow an immediate return to duty. Abnormal vitals trigger a mandatory 10-minute rest period focused on hydration, nutrition, and environmental recovery. After 10 minutes, the rehab officer performs a reassessment. If vitals are still abnormal, another rest cycle begins. Up to 3 rest cycles can be performed. If vitals remain abnormal after 3 cycles, the system displays a maximum rehab cycles reached alert, and the firefighter is transferred to EMS. Critical vitals at any point trigger an immediate exit from rehab and transfer to EMS. The rehab officer confirms every disposition. In rare cases, a firefighter may have a documented baseline that differs from standard parameters. For example, an athlete with a resting heart rate of 52 or a firefighter with a known medical condition. The rehab officer can document an assessment exception, but this is intentionally a high-friction workflow. It requires selecting the justification type, such as athlete, known condition, or other. The rehab officer must enter their name and a detailed explanation, then physically check a confirmation box. This ensures exceptions are rare, documented, and defensible. They are not overrides. They are documented baseline exceptions. Here's why the rehab officer should take tremendous pride in this role. The cumulative exposure index, calculated as layer 1 plus layer 2 plus layer 3 plus layer 4 minus layer 5, builds a career-long exposure profile for every firefighter. When a firefighter files a cancer claim, the question is always the same. Can you prove the exposure was occupational? Rehab. 1584 gives that firefighter a documented, time-stamped, digitally signed record of every incident, every environmental condition, every operational task, and every protective action. The rehab officer is the person who created that record. They are the person who set the layers that may one day defend a brother or sister's cancer claim. That is an extraordinary responsibility and an extraordinary privilege. The rehab officer is the backbone of Rehab 1584. Every layer they set, every refusal they document, every vitals assessment they confirm, builds the defensible record that protects the firefighters they serve. Take pride in this role. It matters more than you know.